Hello, my name is Yobel Mengisoon. I'm one of the admissions counselors in the undergraduate admissions office at Seattle University. And I'm excited to be here today to talk a little bit about writing an effective college essay. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you all can see it real quick. Here we go. Perfect. So before we get started, we always like to kind of just start off to talk a little bit about some of the things that we're hoping to accomplish with this presentation. So the college admissions essay is notorious throughout the application process, as students will start kind of going into their final year and their senior year. That personal statement is that one thing that's looming that a lot of students have concerns about. So my goal is to kind of hopefully help alleviate those concerns as you go throughout this presentation, just kind of learn effective tips and effective tools that will allow you to be successful, but ultimately give you an insight on how we use college admissions, how we use those personal statements to kind of help aid in our admissions decision-making process. So why is the essay important? So there's a lot of things, of course, that kind of play a role in that essay, right? But we'll kind of focus on a couple of things here. So of course, the first is institutional fit. So in terms of institutional fit, really for us, we're really looking to see how do you fit here on our community at CIU. So that personal statement is going to give us an insight, some background into who you are, and it's going to provide you a stage, a platform for you to be able to kind of go in depth about who you are. But at the end of the day, for us, it really comes down to how do you fit here in the Seattle University community, and what do you bring to that Seattle University community? And then, of course, the student voice. The student voice is a very important aspect of the admissions process. And we want to make sure that we're providing students the opportunity to provide their voice into the application. There's a lot of things and components in the application that students feel like they don't have control over, or they feel like their voice is not there, whether it be the transcripts, whether it be the letters of recommendations, of course, whether it be the SAT or ACT test scores. But at the end of the day, that student voice is really important. And we want to know who that student is. So we want to provide that student a platform to be able to come to Seattle University with that voice and show who they are. So in that personal statement, that student voice is really important. And then, of course, the writing assessment piece. So a lot of students are unfamiliar with this, but ultimately for a lot of institutions, including Seattle University, we're really looking to see, are you an effective writer? And of course, as you transition from high school to college, that college admissions, as you kind of transition, that writing piece is going to be important as you kind of go through your curriculum in your 4 years. So we want to know, where are you at in terms of your writing? And of course, how much do you need to kind of build? And of course, where are you kind of starting off as you come to SU? So in terms of the writing piece, we're going to be looking very closely in terms of the structure, the style of your writing, the grammar, the punctuation, and so forth. And then lastly, what role do you play in a community? So this can mean a lot of things for a lot of different students. Every student has a different community that they're a part of, whether it be their family, whether it be their school community, whether it be their own community within their neighborhood. There's lots of things that go into the specific question. But at the end of the day, we want to know kind of what role do you play in the communities that you're a part of and the communities that you care about. So in terms of what makes a great essay, there's so many things that really go into play here. But ultimately, the first one that we want to focus on here is that in that essay, you're really being able to have a single focus, and you're really having a strong thesis. So what that means is that in your essay, you're able to focus on one specific thing that you're hoping to talk about, and you're able to unpack it over the course of your 650-word personal statement. And that thesis typically is going to come into play in that last sentence of your first paragraph. But that thesis should be the structure, the backbone of your essay, and it should be where all of your ideas will be branching off of from. Having a consistent tone. Students who have a single focus will in turn allow them to have a consistent tone and allow them to have a clear voice. All of these things go hand in hand. But at the end of the day, really being able to be consistent in what you're focusing on, be consistent in your ideas is going to be important. And having a clear voice is really important. So at the end of the day, having important kind of structure to your essay is going to allow you to have a clear voice. So hopefully you're kind of getting a lot of these things kind of chain together, right? So of course, talked about that structure, appropriate structure. Appropriate structure basically means that you're structuring out your essay to really carry your reader from the beginning to the end. Structure in an essay means a lot of things, but I'm going to focus on being able to break up your ideas into multiple paragraphs. A lot of the times we'll get essays where students will write a complete paragraph in one single word chunk. And it's really hard for the reader to be able to read that, but ultimately be able to follow your ideas in a single kind of paragraph format. So structure allows you to, again, be able to take your reader from the beginning to the end and be able to kind of help them kind of transition throughout your ideas and be able to kind of end in a satisfying conclusion. Authenticity and sincerity, this is so important. So it's really important that you understand that your reader, which is going to be your college admissions officer, admissions counselor, is really well-versed in reading personal statements. And so we really have gotten to a point where we really are able to see whether or not a student is authentic, whether or not a student is sincere. And so as I go throughout this presentation, we'll kind of harp back on the specific point, but ultimately write what you care about, write what you're passionate about. In turn, that's going to allow you to be authentic. That's going to allow you to be sincere. And then lastly, having strong grammar and spelling. So important in an effective college essay. And we talked a little bit about how the college essay is going to serve as a writing assessment for your specific application. So really at the end of the day, it comes down to having strong grammar, having strong spelling. And as we go throughout the presentation, we'll kind of come back to how do we do this in terms of editing and so forth. Awesome. So now I'm going to kind of break down the essay into 4 different parts, ultimately to be able to kind of help students throughout their process, their writing process, I should say. And of course, be able to end at this presentation, providing some effective tips before we leave. So step 1, choose your topic. So at Seattle University, our application is located on the Common Application. The Common Application has 7 prompts that you can choose from. And one of those, of course, includes a topic of your choice. So if you're not really feeling the 6 other topics, you can always create your own topic that will allow your ideas to flow. But one of the most important things about why picking that prompt is important, because it's going to allow your ideas to kind of cultivate from that specific question, right? So as you get that prompt, that question, that prompt, whatever it is that's leading your essay, it's going to, again, allow your ideas to flow, allow your ideas to kind of start kind of flowing in your head and allow you to kind of think about different ways in which you can achieve that prompt. So there's a couple of ways that kind of go into that, right? A couple of things that allow your ideas to flow. So as you can see, brainstorming, free writing, reflecting, there's a lot of things there, but all of these things really are able to kind of depend on the student's writing process. So some students love to brainstorm. Brainstorming can mean a lot of different things for students. Some students will like to kind of have a kind of their prompt sitting in the middle and then just have branching ideas or examples based off of that prompt just on a notepad. Some students love to just go straight into it and writing their essay. And basically just from whatever that prompt kind of sparks or inspires, it allows your essay to kind of take shape. And then lastly, a lot of students love to reflect before they even begin the brainstorming process, before they even begin the free writing process. Reflecting means a lot of different things for students as well. I know for myself, I love to take walks and just kind of reflect back on my life. And that is something that has always helped me, especially as I continue to write essays. Being able to just take a walk and just be able to observe my surroundings, or take some time to watch like your favorite Netflix movie, or watch your favorite television show or something, or just be able to talk to your family members, talk to your friends. Reflecting means a lot of different things, but ultimately what reflecting does is it allows your ideas to kind of start flowing and coming up to the forefront, and then allow you to start thinking of ways in which you can use those specific ideas as examples for your essay to start building out that structure. And then lastly, find your thesis. So the thesis is going to be the backbone, the structure of your essay, right? It's going to allow your ideas to be consistent. It's going to allow you the thesis is going to allow you to be honest and keep yourself consistent throughout your essay. So of course, that kind of question there, what do you want your reader to take away from your essay, is going to be kind of the foundation of your thesis. Ultimately, this essay is going to accomplish this, right? And of course, as you leave as you leave that essay and you finish that essay and you submit that essay, this thesis is going to continue to be the one thing that is consistent throughout your essay and is allowing your ideas to continue to tie in and flow back to that thesis. Some students love to kind of just start writing their essay and then of course leaving that thesis blank. And then after they've written their essay, going back to their thesis to write their thesis. As that allows their thesis to kind of be consistent with the tone and the structure and the narrative and the ideas in which they've cultivated throughout their essay. So that's always one great way to write a solid thesis. But of course, some students love to write a thesis that keeps them consistent and allows them continue to kind of refer back to. So it really comes down to how do you work best and how do you write best? But at the end of the day, a thesis is so important in your essay because it allows your reader to be able to kind of know, okay, this is what I should be taking away from this specific essay. And as I leave this essay, was I able to kind of take what that writer wanted me to take away? Awesome. And then of course, the next part, of course, as I talked a little bit about the structure, is step 2, structuring out your essay. So there's a lot of things that go into the structure, but ultimately we want to focus on kind of good narrative storytelling, and that will allow your ideas to be a little bit more kind of allow your reader to be able to kind of be more immersed into your personal statement. So what is your hook? The hook is going to be the first sentence in your essay that draws your reader in. And when I ask that question, what is your hook? It's important that the writer, the student knows who their audience is. So in the case of the personal statement, your audience is going to be your admissions counselor. Your admissions counselor has read a ton of different essays, probably up to that point has already read a couple other essays. So in terms of that hook, the hook is so important for students to be able to kind of start thinking about how do I draw my reader in? And then of course, start thinking about how do I get that reader into the meat of my essay and be able to kind of make my reader excited about what they're reading, what they're going to be reading about. So ultimately, what is your hook? And start thinking about that. In terms of the structure of your essay, how do I get my reader to get drawn into my personal statement? So that first sentence is really, really important. And then next, want to kind of go into kind of what are the 5 features of a good story? So the reason why we like to kind of use a narrative as a way to be able to kind of help students think about the personal statement is because good stories are always going to help your reader get drawn in. Good stories are going to allow your reader to be engaged. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the best personal statements are going to be the ones that take a reader from the beginning to the middle to the end through kind of a progressing set of ideas or examples that give your reader something to kind of leave on or a note to leave on. So as you can see, there's a couple things here. So at the initiating event, what was the one thing that kind of initiated this specific event that you're talking about? And then next, that internal response. What was your internal response to that event? So this can be a lot of different things. Students will write about that event, for example, could be like you tore your ACL in a soccer game. So what was your internal response to tearing your ACL? And then next, what was your goal? What was your goal after you've torn your ACL? Was it to continue to go back and play that sport again? Was it to learn from that experience? And was it to kind of tell yourself, maybe I don't want to play this sport anymore? There's a lot of different things that play a role here in the goal, but ultimately the goal is going to be what was your attempt at solving this event? And then the consequence / outcome. So what was the outcome? What happened at the end of the day? Did you end up going back to playing soccer? And then of course, your reaction and your response. Where did you leave this specific story off on in terms of your reaction, your response to that overall outcome? So I talked a little bit about that torn ACL as a kind of an example. And that was just something that just came to my head quickly, just to kind of give you something to kind of have an understanding, an example of like these 5 phases of a good story. But ultimately, at the end of the day, being able to take your reader from beginning, middle to end, and just kind of be able to lead them through that set of progressive ideas, progressive examples is going to allow your essay to be really, really strong and allow your reader to be able to take something away at the end of the day. And then lastly, we talk about that conclusion. The conclusion is so important into an essay, but the conclusion ultimately in this specific personal statement, as you kind of think about personal statements, is going to be how do you make your kind of college, that college that you're applying to, in this case, Seattle University, how do you make it relate to how, whatever that experience is, how do you relate it back to your future college experience? So this is a mistake that students generally will make a lot. They will kind of forget to kind of bring it back to their specific college experience, or what they hope to kind of take their specific where they are currently, and how do they hope to bring that to their next institution. So I talked a little bit about on the first slide about institutional fit. Really make sure that in this personal statement that you're keeping that in mind. And of course, at the end, in that conclusion, you're taking that institutional fit and you're really being able to incorporate that within your story, incorporate that within who you are. Step 3, of course, is write a draft. So this means a lot of things, right? Every student has a different way of writing their draft, a different way of approaching it. But here's a couple of things to kind of take a note in this particular step. So remember, always aim to tell a story. At the end of the day, personal statements that are the best are the ones that are narrative driven and are able to take your reader from beginning, middle to end through a set of progressing ideas, a set of progressive examples. Write about what interests you. So as I said earlier, authenticity and sincerity are a huge part of that essay. And so it's really easy for us to know whether or not you're being authentic or whether or not you're being sincere, because of the fact that students who are ultimately more interested in a specific topic, more interested or passionate about a specific thing, naturally are going to be able to kind of allow that to come through in their writing. So of course, if you're not interested in whatever you're writing about, it's going to come out in your writing as well. And it's very easy for us to be able to tell whether or not you're being authentic in that specific writing piece. So at the end of the day, write about what interests you, write about what allows you to be kind of excited, allows your ideas to flow, and allows your ideas to be successful. And then of course, when possible, remember to always use specific examples or anecdotes. So I talked a little bit about the structure of the essay. Remember, those paragraphs don't just serve as a way to kind of break up your essay. Ultimately, they serve as a way for you to be able to go in depth into your overall narrative. So you're using those paragraphs as a way to kind of provide a specific example, provide anecdotes. So that's a huge reason why structure is so important in an essay. So as you kind of start thinking about writing this draft, remember to always have those examples, those anecdotes kind of isolated into specific paragraphs so that you can kind of unpack those and unravel whatever your specific thesis was. So ultimately, at the end of the day, examples, anecdotes, so important. Use humor carefully. So this is one that really depends on the student. Some students feel it's really, again, it's easy to tell when a student is naturally not like someone who is like really good at using humor in an essay. So at the end of the day, it's really about that specific student and who you are. And of course, how do you infuse humor into your life? And of course, in the personal statement, remember to make sure you're using humor very carefully in the sense of being able to make sure that it really has a purpose in your essay and a purpose into your overall ideas. Remember to think about your audience. So your audience is going to be your admissions counselor. Your admissions counselor up to that point maybe has read multiple different essays. So we talked a little bit about writing a hook to your essay, and as you can see on this slide here. So that's a big part of bringing your audience in. Your audience is coming from, you don't know where your audience is coming from, but ultimately your audience is your admissions counselor. Your admissions counselor is going to be the one that's making those admissions decisions, is going to be reading your essay. So remember to think about your audience. And as you kind of get into writing that personal statement, that draft, remember to think about that hook. The hook is going to be what's going to draw your reader in. And at the end of the day, that's going to be so important for your reader to be able to kind of be excited about some of the ideas and the things that you're going to be able to kind of lead them throughout your personal statement. And then lastly, don't rush, right? Your personal statement is so important. Make sure you take the time to write and build out what you're hoping to kind of write in your personal statement. So at the end of the day, don't write your essay like the week that the application is due. Remember to write your essay over the course of a period of weeks so that you can put in the effort and the time to really build out that effective personal statement. So step 4, right? You wrote your draft. You kind of have that kind of backbone, that kind of initial essay that is starting to look like an essay, right? You kind of started writing it out. You brainstormed, you reflected, you have all these ideas kind of broken out into a kind of an essay format. So step 4 kind of harps and centers around editing. So editing is a huge component, a huge process of the huge part of the writing process. And so in terms of the editing phase, remember, after you wrote that draft, it's really, really hard for you to go back and reread your essay and really be able to catch certain mistakes. So my recommendation is to take a break and return after a few days. And so this really is something that really comes down to allowing you to kind of refresh your mind and kind of refresh your ideas. And so you take a break, whether it be a couple of hours all the way up to 2 days. It really depends on how, again, where you're feeling at that specific moment. But ultimately, as you come back to that essay, it's going to allow you to come back with a refreshed mind and allow you to come back with a much more kind of refreshed process on how to edit and look at these specific mistakes that you've made in your essay. So that's important in the editing process. Take a break, return after a few days, and then of course you'll be able to start catching a couple of those mistakes and things that you wouldn't have caught as soon as after you've written the essay. And then, of course, let a family member, an English teacher, or a trusted friend, or a counselor, college counselor, high school counselor, whoever it may be, to look over and read over that essay. It's really important to get other eyes and other perspectives on your essay because it will allow you to kind of look at things from a different perspective that you didn't ultimately be able to take into account. So, of course, editing is really important in the writing process. And of course, part of that editing process is going to be having someone you trust read over it to provide examples or different types of things that you can change in your essay to make it stronger. And then proper spelling and grammar are important, right? We talked a little bit about that writing assessment in the earlier parts of this presentation. And so making sure that you're catching those spelling mistakes, making sure that you're catching those grammar mistakes, and of course, ultimately at the end of the day, making sure that your structure is effective in being able to kind of tell your story. And then of course, lastly, submit that polished masterpiece. You did it, you wrote it, and you really took the time to kind of build it out. And now it's time to submit it and be proud of what you did. So before we kind of end this presentation, we like to kind of talk a little bit about some missed opportunities and mistakes that students will make on their personal statements. So of course, the essay sounds like it could be any other student's. So this can mean a lot of different things, but ultimately at the end of the day, the personal statement, of course, it kind of starts with that personal component, right? Every student is unique. Every student comes from a different background. Make sure to kind of really draw from your own unique experiences. And of course, it's really hard to do that. And I definitely understand kind of coming from that specific perspective as a student who was once applying to college. It was really tough for me to kind of look internally and look kind of critically at my life and see what can I talk about that will allow me to kind of, again, allow me to show my unique aspects, my uniqueness, right? And at the end of the day, every student has a unique perspective, and make sure that you draw from that unique background. And it can be a lot of different things, but definitely make sure that you're not writing about like that writing about Key Club or like writing about sports or something like that. Everybody has done sports, everybody has done Key Club, but what can allow you to be standing, what could allow you to stand out from that specific scenario will allow you to go into those unique kind of scenarios that you've had within that sport, unique scenarios in which you had within Key Club, and so forth. Your authentic voice was lost with over editing. And so you edited it too much, you lost what you originally intended your essay to talk about. So your essay ends up kind of being a mixture of different ideas kind of mashed together that doesn't allow your essay to flow anymore. So at the end of the day, like I said, that thesis, always make sure that you're referring back to your thesis. And as you edit, always make sure that whenever you edit a new sentence in, a new structure component, remember to look back at that thesis to kind of see whether or not you're being honest, you're being true to what you originally intended your personal statement to be about. And then of course you wrote more about someone else versus yourself. Remember, at the end of the day, this is a personal statement. And although we are not encouraging, although we're not discouraging writing about someone else, writing about a hero or someone that's really close to you or someone that you look up to, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you always bring it back to who you are, bring it back into what you bring into that community in which you're applying to. So of course, the personal statement is the personal statement at the end of the day. And so at the end of the day, you want to make sure that that essay really again, centers on the unique aspects of who you are. And if you do write about someone else, at the end of the day, you always want to make sure that you're bringing it back onto you and bringing it back onto how it's allowed you to be where you are today. And then the essay, of course, wasn't relevant to your current life. So the reason why we always kind of encourage students to write about things that have happened recently, because it allows their ideas to be stronger and allows their examples to be a lot more stronger. Whereas if you're pulling from things that are harder to remember, your ideas won't be as consistent. They won't be as strong. Although if you feel like you can pull out specific examples and ideas from well before that your high school years, definitely feel free to do so, as long as you feel like your examples and your ideas are specific and they're able to tell your full story. And then of course, essay summarizes the resume and it mimics the activities list. So sometimes students will just have kind of bullet points of kind of what they've done in their life, whether it be in the clubs they've done, the sports they've done, and things like that. So you're going to have a chance to kind of talk a little bit about some of those cool activities and leadership opportunities that you haven't the chance to talk about in your common application. There's a section dedicated to that. So at the end of the day, make sure you're taking your personal statement as a chance for you to write an effective story about who you are and being able to build out a narrative of your unique aspects. So definitely don't make sure you're not putting that bullet pointed resume of the things that you've done and the things that you've accomplished, because that's definitely not going to allow you to write the most effective college essay. And then lastly, you're trying too hard to impress. This is something that for me personally, again, it comes down to every student's unique situation. But at the end of the day, you do want to make sure that you're writing something that really allows you to be excited about and allows you to be passionate. So make sure that whatever you're writing about is true to who you are and is true to your authentic voice. And again, what you're going to bring to that next stage of your life in higher education. So some last things to kind of take note, reminders, of course. There's no need for a giant narrative, right? Less is more. And when I say less is more, I more so mean in terms of the ideas in which you're focusing on. So sometimes students will pull from all kinds of different examples and different types of stories and different things like that. We want you to be we want your essay to be focused. We want your essay to be kind of really unraveling on a specific moment in your life that you want to be able to describe it and kind of provide context to us for. And so definitely make sure that in that essay, your single focus allows you to unpack it with detailed examples. But at the end of the day, we don't want you pulling from multiple different stories, because it's going to allow your reader to kind of get confused and your reader won't be able to kind of follow where you're going with your personal statement. Find the missing puzzle piece from your application. And this is so important. So students sometimes will talk a little bit about their sports career in their leadership and activities. They'll go in depth about their football or basketball careers, or they'll talk a little bit in depth about their kind of clubs that they're taking part of. And essentially, they will go they'll go right back and then talk about football, talk about the sports they've done, talk about the clubs that they've done. And essentially, one of the things about this personal statement, you want to look at it as kind of the missing puzzle piece. So what are the things that I talked about in my application that I didn't talk about yet? How do I fill in a certain part about who I am, that unique aspect, and to kind of really fill it in with this essay? So again, the application is a puzzle for us. We're really trying to be able to put together who you are as a person. What do you bring to our institution? Are you academically prepared? All these different things play a role in our review process. But in terms of this personal statement, it's going to serve as a stage for you to be able to talk more in depth about what you bring to that institution, but ultimately about who you are, where do you come from, and what makes you unique. And that's really important. So that missing puzzle piece factor is really important within that personal statement. And then let your life, your voice speak through the essay. You know, that passion is going to come out if you're really excited about what you're talking about, and let it flow and let it come out within that essay. Let your essay, of course, really allow your ideas to kind of come out and allow your ideas to kind of get your reader excited about what they're seeing. And then lastly, use the prompt as a starting point. Remember, we talked about that prompt. That prompt is going to be so important for your ideas to start flowing. So remember to start picking your prompt as you kind of start thinking about writing that essay. That prompt is going to be really important for your examples, your ideas to start flowing, for your brainstorming process, your free writing process, and of course, your reflection process as well. Awesome. So that is what we have for you today. We're so excited to kind of get into reading your personal statements. We know you are going to have, you are going to be able to go right into those personal statements and really be able to infuse a little of these tips, a little of these cool kind of tips and tools that will allow you to be effective in your essay. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact undergraduate admissions at any time. As you can see, our contact is up there on the screen. And we're really excited as admissions counselors. The best part about the application process is being able to review and read essays, because again, every student has a unique perspective. And for me as an admissions counselor, I'm always so excited to read those, because every student has so many cool backgrounds. It comes from so many different walks of life. And so that's one of the great things about the personal statement. And I hope that you take this chance, this workshop, to kind of take some of these things away with you, but also really think of that personal statement as something that you're excited about, something that you feel like is going to allow you to, again, go into your essay and be motivated about what you're writing. So that's what I have for you all today. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your afternoon. And again, feel free to contact us anytime. And yeah, good luck on writing those personal statements.